Yeah, so this video is more of an update and a roadmap for 2026. I know it's almost February, but this video is more of an overview of what is to be expected and the path towards a first release. So for the past 9 months, I've been working on this engine, the Ludens engine. Basically, core data structures, logging, events, Lua, and multimedia parsing, window management, cameras, gizmos, rendering stuff, audio stuff, a custom UI library, assets, scene management, and project management, of course. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually just the bare minimum for a general purpose game engine. It's at a point where it's still very far from a 3D game engine, but very close to a functional 2D game engine. I kinda mentioned this in my previous video as well, but we are basically pivoting towards 2D game editor workflows and aiming for a minimal 2D game engine release. So what is a bare minimum 2D game engine? Well, it's a software that is capable of creating a bare minimum 2D game, right? So what is a minimum 2D game? Well, at least we will need some components, like you will have to play audio. We already have audio source component. And of course, we would like to put some pixels onto the screen, as if the screen is a 2D canvas. I'm working on the Sprite 2D component right now. And finally, we will have some kind of screen UI subsystem, so that we can design our in-game UI on the screen. There's also like world space UI, but obviously that's not within the scope of a bare minimum game engine. 2D physics components are not in the scope as well, because for a lot of basic 2D games, you can kind of just hard code the physics collision inside your game scripts. But yeah, it's of course possible to integrate some 2D physics engine at some point. For the UI subsystem, it's basically just allowing people to design their UI as a hierarchy of widgets. So think of something like Unity's UI toolkit or Unreal motion graphics. Obviously, for the initial release, we will only be providing like the essential UI widgets like buttons, panels, and text, etc. Of course, we would also need to be able to program the UI in some way, which brings us to the next topic, Lua scripting. So for the scripting language implementation, I basically have like 3 use cases. The first one being dynamic languages, which you sacrifice type safety in favor of like rapid prototyping. For the dynamic language part, I'm just using Lua. I think it's a very easy language to learn, or more specifically, I'm using Lua JIT as the implementation for just-in-time compiling Lua scripts. As for the statically typed language, I don't really have a strong preference now, but C# is a very strong candidate. And finally, we kind of have native scripting, which is basically calling APIs from your game engine natively. Ludens engine is written in C++, so it's basically kind of like exposing C++ bindings so that you can call the engine directly. This will probably wait until we have a plugin system. So yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically for the first release, we're just gonna do Lua. And after the screen space UI system and Lua API has been finalized for the first release, I can work on embedding a documentation directly in the editor. So yeah, I'm not gonna make another website just to host documentation. It's just gonna be completely embedded in your editor. So something similar to Godot, I think. Godot also has a website, of course, but I think it's just really nice that you can just open up your documentation inside the editor without any latency. Like you don't have to do any HTTP request just because you want to look up some scripting API. So that's kind of the scope for the initial release. I'll be doing lots of QA and testing, especially because it's the initial release. Like there has to be some bug somewhere in some scary places. After all that, we can finally have a version 0.1.0 alpha. Depends on how stable the software is. Testing a game engine is pretty interesting. I can probably make a few videos on it as well. For 2026, I kinda want to be at this stage. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but the platforms are Windows and Linux, and the graphics API is going to be Vulkan. I'll probably add OpenGL as a graphics backend at some point. So yeah, that's about it for the roadmap. Very humble beginning. I personally prefer starting small and then iteratively improve it instead of like making hundreds of devlogs and then never finishing something. So yeah, the entire codebase is free and open source on GitHub. I'll probably have to find some way to fund the development, but it's going to be after the first release.